Hakurei, the Shrine Maiden of Paradise from the Touhou series. Reimu is from a long line of Hakurei Shrine Maidens, all tasked with guarding the Hakurei Shrine, located on the edge of Gensokyo, a haunted, landlocked territory that's heavily populated by yokai. It's the Shrine Maiden's duty to keep up the balance between humans and yokai, exterminating evil yokai while also preventing human spirits from becoming yokai themselves. This has gone on for generations, all leading up to the current maiden, Reimu. She's laid back, a tad airheaded, but also very no-nonsense, usually not much caring why someone is causing trouble, but is more so just bothered about being dragged into it at all. Regardless, when she is dragged in, she sees things through to the very end. I mean, she's gonna complain about it the whole time, but she gets it done. She's a powerful shaman who all yokai, and most of her friends, fear. And despite her more than likely reluctance to do so, she'd very easily be able to prove herself in the world of Super Smash Bros. So getting right into things, Reimu would be an extremely light character, as well as a floaty one, emphasizing her natural ability to hover. She'd have 2 jumps, and she would be able to wall jump. Making a moveset for Reimu was certainly interesting. Touhou has a plethora of games, with there also being many different types of game genres throughout the whole series. There were even a bunch of games that were originally considered fan games, but then were made into official games. It honestly kinda makes it hard to keep up with what's what. But that is the general gist of what the Touhou project is as a whole. It was mostly built up from a very wide community. It even holds a Guinness World Record for the most prolific fan-made shooter series. So this is a case where I don't mind looking at what was considered fan-made, since those games are also important to the series. I do still want to try and stick with games that were personally handled or overlooked by Zun, the original creator, but I did tip my toes into others here and there. Overall though, for the sake of consistency, and my sanity, I opted to focus on what was most commonly used among Reimu's arsenal across all of the games. And this does of course include her main weapon, a gohei that Reimu refers to as her purification rod, used to ward off demons while also smacking people silly. She does also seem to be fairly proficient in martial arts, as we see from the Touhou fighting games. In fact, it's thanks to those fighting games that made filling out this moveset all the simpler. So starting with Reimu's jab, it can be a 3-hit jab that comes from moves that she has in games like Immaterial and Missing Power or Scarlet Weather Rhapsody. It starts with a quick high to low vertical slap with her sleeve forwards, then follows up with a straight kick, then ends with Reimu lunging forwards, thrusting both hands ahead to launch foes away. Her dash attack can be a baseball slide kick forwards. She uses this in games like Missing Power and Rhapsody, however the origins of this attack actually go back as far as the very first Touhou game, highly responsive to prayers. That was a brick-breaking style game that involved bouncing a yin-yang orb around to flip cards, using Reimu at the bottom of the screen to hit the orb around. She could use the slide kick there to help move around a little faster, as well as to hit the orb into the air. So to harken back to those origins, getting hit by this dash attack will propel foes upwards. The side tilt can be a move from the aerial fighting game called Hopeless Masquerade, where she does a quick spin while passing her purification rod to her other hand, and slaps it forwards while also slightly propelling herself forwards a short distance as well. It has a bit of disjoint, but it does require a bit of precision, but as such, you can also angle the move. Her up tilt can be a quick jumping high kick with a single foot, kicking from low to high. It's a move from Missing Power that's really only able to hit in front of Reimu's Y-axis, but since she does a small leap during the move, it can jump over lower attacks. The down tilt can be a move where she spins her purification rod on the ground, dealing multi-hitting damage that launches foes with the final hit while defying physics all at the same time. The spinning rod is very low to the ground though, so it's not hitting very many opponents who aren't grounded themselves. It's also a move with no definitive launch angle. Foes will be thrown into different directions depending on where in the attack they are by the time the final hit happens. Despite that though, it has good disjoint, and I can also see a move like this being nasty for 2-framing recovering opponents. Reimu's side smash can have her spin while swinging her purification rod forwards for a mighty strike. She also imbues the rod with spiritual energy, adding way more oomph to the attack. You can also see her adding more energy while she charges the smash. This move actually comes from 2 games, Hopeless Masquerade and Touhou Kabuto V, Burst Battle. The up smash can have Reimu use her Ascension Kick, a backflip kick Reimu can do while her feet give off spiritual energy. It comes out quick, slightly propels her upwards, and is deceptively powerful. We see this attack in most of the 2D Touhou fighting games, but it also looks like its origins start at the very first game, highly responsive to prayers. I don't think it was called the Ascension Kick at that point, but it was a backflip kick that Reimu could use out of her slide to hit the yin-yang orb even harder than usual. Now for her down smash, this can have Reimu use another one of her most deadly techniques, the Evil Ceiling Circle. This originated as a screen-clearing bomb when Reimu used the Dream spell card in the Denmaku shoot-'em-up game Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. For smash, it'll have Reimu press her hand down to create a magic circle on the ground around her. The circle then releases power that shoots straight upwards, hitting on both sides of Reimu at the same time while also knocking opponents standing on the circle into the air. This can be an interesting down smash that can't actually clang with other moves. It ignores opponents' disjointed attacks, which will usually result in Reimu getting hurt, but this also means that if a foe tries to attack with a move that also contains their hurt box, then they're going to get hurt while Reimu remains safe. Now for the aerials, which I can see being a lot of Reimu's go-to option since she is a floaty character, her neutral air can be a quick horizontal spin while she holds her purification rod out. It's very fast and will launch foes on contact, but it can only hit on Reimu's left and right. This was the first hit of her melee attack in the game Touhou Sky Arena. Her forward air can be a straight kick forwards, one of her aerial attacks in the Missing Power style fighting games. In those games, this attack did propel her forwards to make it a flying kick, but for smash, it won't do that. Her back air can have Reimu do a quick backflip while kicking her foot behind herself from high to low. This attack came from Hopeless Masquerade, and just like in that game, it can spike foes if it sweet spots. Her up air can be a simple double kick straight upwards, another attack from Hopeless Masquerade, and her down air can have her unleash a magic pressure spell that shatters at a downward angle, an attack from the Missing Power style of games. The shattering magic can hurt foes, but it doesn't do a whole lot, whereas getting hit by Reimu's hand at the very moment she uses the magic will cause foes to be spiked. Reimu could grab with her one free arm and pummel by smacking the foe in the face with her purification rod. Her forward throw can have Reimu conjure a barrier around herself that collides with the foe and knocks them forwards. The barrier can also hurt other foes if they're too close. The back throw can have her throw the foe behind herself, then fire some of Fuda's shots into the foe to send them even farther backwards. The shots fired can be interrupted or even reflected if someone else gets in the way. The up throw can have her conjure a stack of barriers that start low and raise high, setting the foe upwards with each stack that appears. This is another throw that can hurt other foes who are too close. And the down throw can have Reimu trip the foe to the ground, then follow up with her stabbing them with her purification rod, which was actually an attack she used in Touhou Kabuto V to attack opponents who were laying on the ground. It deals decent damage while knocking them away. Now getting into Reimu's special attacks, these will be the moves that all come from Reimu's more traditional Denmaku shoot-'em-up origins. For her neutral special, she'll use one of the most commonly used Fuda that she has to ward off her enemies, the Hakare Amulet. This is a projectile special that can be used in one of two ways, either normally or focused. To use it normally, all you have to do is tap the special button. This'll have Reimu simply throw a single amulet straight forwards. It's pretty big, and it deals multi-hitting damage to foes as it drags them along until it disappears at the peak of its range. It also has some homing properties, as it'll slightly track the location of the foe closest to Reimu's front, but it will just go straight after it tracks for a small bit. Now to use the focused version, you simply hold the button down to charge up the attack, and once fully charged, Reimu will automatically shoot it. The focused version of the amulet deals more damage and it has more range, however its homing capabilities do worsen a bit as a result. Using the charged focused version is also a tad riskier, since Reimu can't move while she charges and she does have a bit of end lag after shooting the amulet, so if she misses, that could spell trouble for her. This mostly comes from how focus shots work compared to normal shots in the Touhou Denmaku games. Normal shots can hit wider areas, good for when you're met with a cluster of enemies, whereas focus shots condense your attacks, better when aiming for a single foe, but it requires you to be more accurate, and it also slows Reimu down. In which case, next up for Reimu's side special, this could have her use the Yokai Buster. This is generally a smaller Fuda charm, though more often than not, they're thrown in fast barrages. This will also have both a normal and a focused version. Tapping to use it normally will have her throw a bundle of 3 charms forwards that start bunched up, but then spread out the further they fly. Each individual Fuda deals small flinching damage, so it's weak, but it's still a great pressure tool since it widens as it goes, making it harder for further away opponents to deal with. Now if you choose to focus it up instead, which is also done by charging it up, this will have Reimu throw 4 Fuda instead of just 3. However, they don't widen nearly as much compared to the normal version. However, each individual charm deals more damage compared to the normal version, and combined with the Fuda not being spread out as much, this makes it more likely for foes to be hit by more of the Fuda at once. overall giving it a superior damage output. And just like for the Hakurei amulet, Reimu will automatically throw the focused Yokai Buster after it's fully charged, but there is a bit more end lag on it. Next up for Reimu's up special, this could have her use the Denmaku Rush technique. I'll be combining how this attack functions with the same Denmaku Rush from the game Touhou as Your Reflection, along with the floating wall jump skill that she had in Hopeless Masquerade. Reimu surrounds herself in a barrier, then can charge into any chosen direction based on controller input. After she lunges, she'll stall in the air for a bit, and if you press the control stick again, then she'll do a second lunge into that new direction. If you don't touch the control stick at all, however, then the move will just end. Either way, one lunge or two, she goes into free fall after using this special. Foes in Reimu's way while she uses the Denmaku Rush will take damage, though it's not a whole lot. It's a very weak move. But there is a way to change that. Despite surrounding herself in a barrier, Reimu can be hurt while using the Denmaku Rush. However, she is completely immune to projectiles. In fact, not only that, any projectile that collides with the barrier will actually be absorbed by it, disappearing altogether. And for every projectile absorbed by the barrier, it'll power up the damage output that the rush does to foes hit by it bit by bit, gaining steadily more power with each projectile. This can allow the Denmaku Rush to become very powerful if projectile-happy opponents let it. However, the stacking power isn't permanent. It only lasts until you actually deal damage to a foe with it. Once that happens, then it just reverts back to its weak base power, and will need to absorb more projectiles to get stronger again. Regardless, with this kind of special, projectile spammers will actually have to put forth some effort, because Reimu gets enough of that in her own game, so I'm fairly certain that she's done with that nonsense. But finally, for Reimu's down special, it'll be another projectile special with a normal and focus function. This one being the ever-classic Yin-Yang Orb. The normal version is a gravity-affected projectile that bounces and deals small damage while also popping foes into the air. She'll shoot one forwards, and after a set amount of time, and only after that set amount of time, it'll cause a small explosion of spiritual energy that knocks foes away. We see the Yin-Yang Orb bounce around in the various fighting games, but the bouncing really originates from Highly Responsive to Prayers, where it bounced all around the screen, and Reimu needed to hit it into all the cards to beat the stages. The explosion part of this, on the other hand, comes from Touhou Kabuto V, and speaking of that game, it's also going to be giving a lot of influence to the focused version of Reimu's Yin-Yang Orb. Same rules apply here when charging it up as it does for the neutral and side specials, but when you do so this time, Reimu won't actually shoot the orb forwards. Instead, she'll conjure one and leave it in the spot in front of her where it'll remain stationary. This orb will then act as a turret, firing its own projectiles straight forwards, one shot every second. The shots from the Yin-Yang turret only deal damage, no knockback, but foes trying to attack the orb itself is dangerous because that will cause it to explode. Reimu herself will completely ignore this stationary orb, but she can't place another, or for that matter, use the down special at all until this orb disappears, whether via explosion or by itself after it fires 8 shots. As a matter of fact, regardless of whether it's normal or focused, only one Yin-Yang orb can exist on screen per Reimu at a time. If Reimu tries to use down special again while one is already present, then nothing will happen. While the turret function of the Yin-Yang Orb is seen in Kabuto V, the idea for this as a whole may have originated from how the Yin-Yang Orb also functions predominantly in the Shoot 'em Up series, as secondary shooters that hover around Reimu and fire their own projectiles to really amp up her arsenal. But speaking of projectiles, I'm sure a lot of you right now are just foaming at the mouth over the very idea of this character. A zoner with 3 projectile options, great disjoint, and an up special that lets her be an anti-zoner at the same time? She'd be worse than the Lynx and Belmonts combined! Oh, geez, that was a mental image that I didn't want. But, I mean, I wasn't going to not make Reimu a projectile-happy character. Her main titles are bullet hells. It's literally all about projectiles being shot all over the place. Even in majority of the games that aren't Denmaku shoot-em-ups, there's still projectiles that end up flying everywhere. That said, there is one major difference that a lot of the common projectile spamming characters that we see in Smash have that Reimu won't. Survivability. I made Reimu incredibly light for a reason, to make it easier to KO her as a result of how projectile spam happy most players probably would want to be with her. Heck, this can be reflective of her own games, since she really can't take too much punishment there either. For Reimu, it's all about dodging the onslaught while also being able to return it twofold. Of course, let's be real here. You could just not be a degenerate projectile spammer, because those really are not fun to fight against. Like, Do you enjoy just sitting there mashing the B button? This isn't Hungry Hungry Hippos. You could actually play the game in a way that's also fun for your opponent as well. It's not all about you. Yes, projectile-heavy characters exist, but that does not give you the right to use their powers for evil, because you're going to lose friends that way. Don't be a bad person, and free the projectile heavies, because, and I know this is going to be a shocking revelation for you guys, but they can in fact be fun without you needing to run away while mashing the B button. For Reimu's final smash, she could use by far one of her most powerful and one of her most commonly seen techniques, the Fantasy Seal. This is a fairly simple final smash. Once activated, Reimu will conjure many large rainbow orbs of spiritual energy from her body that rapidly home in on all opponents. Each blast deals massive damage and knockback, so it won't be long before the entire screen is cleared, just like how it works in the Touhou series. It is possible to live through it, but that would take either some extreme skill or the incredible luck of a Hakare. Reimu has had a good quantity of alternate colors across her various games, so picking 7 here was not hard by any means. I'm not going to pick any specific ones though, I just want to give you guys a basic idea. Her default of course has her in her usual red Shrine Maiden uniform. Her first alt could be a blue color. Here we have yellow, then green, then purple, then pink, then black, and finally a white color. Her stage intro can have her appear from a magic circle, as if she's using her dimensional rift abilities or whatnot. For taunts, her first can have her place her rod on her shoulder, then shrug as she shakes her head disapprovingly, because you know that she's totally judging you, especially the projectile spammers. This comes from Kabuto V Burst Battle. Her second taunt can have her hold one of her charms forwards while saying a quote. What quote? I'm not sure. She only speaks Japanese, so I'll let you guys have fun with it. The pose, though, comes from Touhou Azure Reflection, and her third taunt can have her floating in place while some small yin-yang orbs spin around her, mostly referencing how the orbs function in the shoot-'em-up games like I mentioned earlier. And finally, for her victory animations, her first can show Reimu kneeling on a mat while drinking some tea, then smiles at the camera. More so a fairly generic thing we see from shamans, but it can also reference the idea that Reimu's done with her work here, so now she's back to doing what she wants to do. Her second can have her flying around, then ends with a smug floating pose with her hand on her hip. This comes from Touhou Sky Arena, and her final can have her spinning in place, then end with a victory peace sign towards the camera. Her winning animation after completing levels in Touhou Azure Reflection. And that does it for What If Reimu Hakare was in Smash! Researching the Touhou series was such an experience. I have never seen a community so dedicated to a series like this. It's created games, manga, animation, music, and so much more, all of which have shown nothing but love that this series holds by so many people. I know many other big icons get the same treatment, so it seems like nothing special, but I don't know. There's something about what the Touhou project's doing that just seems a lot more inspiring, if that makes any sense. And with Reimu being at the epicenter of such a huge piece of history in the fictional world, it's no wonder that she's seeing such large support to be given a spot in Super Smash Bros. But in which case, if you enjoyed what you saw and would like to see even more characters be given possible Smash movesets, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to support the show and help me be able to make more content for you guys, you can click the join button either below the video or my main page to become a sponsor for my channel. Doing so gets you access to my private Discord as well as channel emotes. You can guarantee that your name appears in my videos, or even get the option of knowing what if character is coming up next a week in advance. I'd really appreciate anything that can be contributed. And of course, if you have a character that you want to see be given a possible Smash moveset, leave a comment down below or contact me on Twitter at BrawlFan1 on Twit. I hope you all enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching!